Yell at my child real quick.
We are group 1 and we are presenting about increasing daily steps. My name is LaQuisha and you can't see me because I am behind the screen sharing my PowerPoint presentation. I am 27. I received my bachelor's degree in sociology from Wayne State University. This is my 3rd semester here at Ball State, and I work at a Center for Autism and provide center-based and home-based ABA therapy. And I'm also close to finishing my required supervision hours to sit for the BCBA exam.
Okay. Hi, I'm Monda. I'm 30. I have a bachelor's in psychology ABA from Northern Michigan University. I'm finishing up my 3rd semester at BSU, and I work as a behavioral tech in Michigan, providing center-based and in-home services to children with ASD. I'm currently collecting experience hours for the BCBA exam.
My name is Caitlin. I'm 22. I received my undergraduate degree from Liberty University in child development, and I'm currently in my 2nd semester at Ball State. I have been an RBT for about a year, and I work with kids ages 3 to 18, and I am also almost done with collecting my supervision hours for my BCBA.
I'm Lauren. I'm 24 years old. I live in North Carolina. I received a bachelor's in rehabilitation services from East Carolina University, and this is also my 3rd semester in the ABA program at BSU. I currently work as an RBT, and I work in-home with kids ages 3 to 14. I've been in the ABA field for about 3 years now, and I love it. And I'm also almost finished with all of my supervision hours required for the exam.
And I'm Carly. I'm 32 years old. I'm living up in South Bend, Indiana, with my husband and my 2 kids. I've received my undergraduate degree from Manchester College, focusing on psychology back in 2007. Currently, I work as an RBT for a nonprofit center here in Northern Indiana, working with autistic children in a school setting.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I am 31 years old and I live in Staten Island, New York. I received my bachelor's in psychology, and this is my 2nd semester at Ball State. I am the program coordinator and an in-home behavior technician for our diagnostic and outreach center. I am currently a BC ABA, and I am gaining my fieldwork hours to be a BCBA.
Okay, there is a bunch of supporting literature. Adults with intellectual disabilities are reported to have cardiorespiratory fitness levels 15% to 40% lower than their non-handicapped peers. Low levels of fitness can contribute to an inability to adequately perform daily living skills or increase job-related work performance, hindering the mainstreaming. Adults are at a higher level, such as hypertension, diabetes, stroke, some cancers, and an early death. According to Lee and Buchner, walking has substantial benefits on the health of not only those with intellectual disabilities, but also non-handicapped persons. Many studies have used token reinforcement to increase exercise with individuals with all across the population with and without intellectual disabilities. Bennett, Eisenman, French, Henderson, and Schultz implemented a token system effectively with individuals with Down syndrome to increase pedaling on a stationary bike. Participants were able to exchange tokens earned for preferred items. Results showed that pedaling increased when the token system was in place and decreased when the token reinforcement system was taken away. Another study by Saunders and others used a token economy with individuals with intellectual disabilities for a weight loss intervention, tracking diet and exercise patterns in 24-hour periods. Participants received a check mark on their data sheet for steps walked, and at a monthly meeting, these check marks earned participants money. This study resulted in an average of 156 minutes of physical activity per week during intervention, with an increase in physical activity during the intervention when compared to the baseline. Ellis and Kress implemented a token system for students with intellectual disabilities to ride an exercise bike and keep their heart rate up during a 45-minute exercise session 3 times per week. Students earned stickers which could be exchanged weekly for time to engage in special leisure activities of their choice. They used an ABAB reversal design. Most participants maintained their heart rate above criterion levels during the token system intervention. Croce and Horvat implemented a token economy system with 3 obese adults with intellectual disabilities to increase aerobic and resistance exercise. Tokens were awarded to subjects for reaching criterion, and 1 additional token was awarded for each 30 seconds of exercise beyond criterion. So the results showed substantial improvements over baseline data in cardiovascular fitness and isometric strength scores. The original study that we replicated is by Krenz, Miltenberger, and Valbuena. They implemented a token system with 5 men with mild to moderate intellectual disabilities to increase walking. They counted 50-meter laps walked in a 1-hour session. They conducted 3 preference assessments each session to always make sure that they found what the participants were most motivated by. There was a noticeable increase in laps in 4 out of the 5 participants. And this study demonstrated that token reinforcement program increased distance walked for adults with intellectual disabilities.
So the purpose of this study was to see if a token system was helpful in increasing steps taken by the individuals in this group. So we did the goal of the participants was to increase the average hourly amount of steps that were taken. And so to do this, we used a token system. And for our token system, we had stickers in a box. And for every certain amount of steps we got, we each collected a sticker. And then eventually, as we collected a certain amount of stickers, we would be able to trade those in for varying levels of reinforcement. So we used an ABAB reversal design, much like that of the original study, to determine if there was a higher probability of us getting more steps when the token system was in place versus when the token system was not in place. We kind of already went over the participants when we introduced ourselves, but the original study used men, and for our group, we had 6 neurotypical women around the ages of 22 and 33. None of the participants had any physical disabilities, whereas the original study was based on the they all had intellectual disabilities of varying disabilities, but one of the participants broke her foot toward the end of the study, so that was one of the things we felt we needed to mention. But I am Caitlin and I'm 22 and I do not exercise on a regular basis. Lauren is 24 and she exercises regularly about 3 times per week and is generally healthy. Monda is 30 years old and does not exercise on a regular basis. Danielle is 31 and she is healthy and does not exercise on a daily basis. And Carly is 32 and does not exercise on a daily basis. LaQuisha is our last participant and she was 27 and also does not exercise on the daily basis. So all of the participants that were a part of this study did not have any health risks when we started this intervention that prevented them from walking throughout the day. And all of the participants vocally stated that they wanted to be a part of this study during the time frame that we determined. This study was conducted in each of the individuals' home states.
So during our study replication, we each recorded data in our own individual settings. So steps could be recorded during work hours, at the gym, at home, or whatever your daily activities are. So the data that were collected in an uncontrolled environment for each participant. So some of the data kind of varies due to that. The steps were tracked during the hours of 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and that was only on days between Tuesday and Saturday. So from Tuesday to Saturday only, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., we tracked our steps. The materials that we used for this replication were Fitbits or other step counters. Some people use the Apple Watches or just like a generic step counter. Another material would be our reinforcement, which was determined by each participant's preference assessment. So everyone's reinforcement varies. And lastly, the token economy system. So we just used a Microsoft table and the tokens were smiley face stickers. So we got a token for each time our average was above baseline for the hour. So figure 1, whoops. Can you go to figure 1? Okay, figure 1 is just the results of our preference assessment. So these are the reinforcer items that each person chose, as well as the cost and how many steps we needed in order to get that reinforcer. Like I said before, it varies from each participant. We all have different reinforcers and all had a different amount of steps in order to receive that reinforcement. Okay, figure 2 is just the table where we would put the smiley face stickers if we got a token.
And to start us off, in order to have a behavior to watch, we had to have an appropriate definition for the behavior. So for the purpose of this study, stepping was our behavior, and we defined stepping as placing one foot in front of the other and also swinging the arms at an average speed. Stepping could also be known to travel on foot at a moderate speed or pace by moving the feet alternatively so that there's always one foot on the ground. Steps were counted in a variety of ways, like we said, in the natural environment or also by working out. The data was collected based on the frequency of steps taken for our 8-hour periods. Every step taken was counted on our Fitbit or on the other generic counter, and then the data was placed into a graph. To figure out the average number of steps taken per hour, the total number of steps for the day was divided by 8. This number allowed participants to know how many steps they were averaging in an hour. And after the average hourly steps were configured, participants were then given tokens based on that number. Tokens were collected on our token board, as we saw in the figure, and were used to determine how many tokens we had gathered and such. Important though that participants could either use their token right away or they could up their tokens to turn them in for a larger reinforcer. For baseline, during baseline, all participants in the group used their step counter to track how many steps they took for the 8-hour period. This 8-hour period was consistent between the hours of 8 a.m. until 4 p.m., going on the days Tuesday through Saturday. No steps outside of this time was counted during the average step count. So if any steps happened before or after, they didn't count in your average. Also, all steps were taken in each individual's own home city, and steps were counted throughout the day in all of the locations. Steps could count a variety of situations, as mentioned. Also, after 4 p.m. for the 5 days determined, participants of the study recorded again the number of steps on the graph. These days functioned as our baseline data, and no tokens were earned during baseline. For our intervention, intervention included the same process of tracking and gathering data as did in the baseline section. However, the token economy was introduced. So again, using the chart as seen in Figure 1, each participant had chosen 5 reinforcers that they easily had access to, with the first reinforcer being less motivating and the 5th being something really highly motivating. During an 8-hour period, participants had the opportunity to earn stickers that were then placed on their token economy board based on how many steps that they had taken during those 8 hours. When they reached their hourly baseline average steps, they earned 1 token. To earn 8 tokens, the participants had to reach their baseline average amount of steps for the day. The number of sticker tokens the participant earned depended on how many steps were taken during the 8-hour period. When 8 tokens were collected, the participant had access to their first reinforcer. 16 tokens got them their second reinforcer, 24 tokens, their third reinforcer, 32 tokens, their fourth reinforcer, and finally 40 tokens would get them their highest, most preferred reinforcer. Each day, participants could choose to use the tokens for the reinforcer, or like I said, they could save them up for access to an even higher reinforcer. And our article focused on increasing walking in adults through the use of a token system. Finally, okay, increasing the step average. The original study structure was altered so that the participants here could replicate the study more effectively. As we mentioned, Fitbits were used to track the total and average steps taken per participant. While in the original study, participants walked laps on a track and there was no type of Fitbit or anything to keep track of that. Also, the original participants were men in their 40s and 60s, had intellectual disabilities as well. In our group, we were all female participants ranging from age of 22 to 32 and with no intellectual disabilities. Reinforcers were provided by each participant in this group, and each token per specified amount of steps was provided by ourselves as well. There wasn't anybody else to give us the tokens or to give us the reinforcement. That was all on us. And finally, unlike the original article where the steps were counted from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. on the weekdays, our study focused from 8 to 4 p.m., again, Tuesday through Saturday.
In order to maintain treatment integrity, each participant emailed all of the other participants a screenshot or a picture of the number of steps that they took from 8 a.m. and also at 4 p.m. Inter-observer agreement was calculated by total count IOA, and the formula is the smaller count divided by higher count and the result multiplied by 100 to get IOA percentage. Agreement for this replication was 99.4%. Range 97% to 100% for Monda, 99.5% range, 96 to 100% for Carly, 100% for LaQuisha, 99.9% to 100% for Caitlin, 100% for Danielle, and 99.8% for Lauren. The procedure for this study, all sessions occurred from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesday through Saturday. We used an ABAB design to determine if the token system was effective in increasing the daily, hourly steps walked, and the baseline data as well as intervention data was collected. It was only during intervention that participants had the ability to earn tokens. This is Caitlin's graph showing the results of her token economy system. As you can see, her steps increased during the intervention stages and decreased during baseline, which shows that the token system was effective for her. These are her average and ranges for each phase of the treatments. And as you can see, her average went up for intervention and decreased during baseline, which shows that the intervention was effective. These are Monda's graphs, which show that the token economy system was also effective for her. And these are her ranges and averages, which show that the averages went up during intervention and decreased during baseline, which is what we wanted to happen. And here's Lauren's graph, which also shows that during intervention, when the intervention was in place, the steps increased, and when it wasn't in place, it decreased. However, there were some other variables that went into account for her because she was running 5Ks. So sometimes her 5K would fall during baseline. So it kind of messed up the results. These are her ranges and averages. This is Carly's graph, which shows that the economy system was effective. These are her averages and ranges. And this is Laquisha's graph, which shows that the token economy actually wasn't effective. And there's different variables for that: work environment and being sick. And these are the averages and ranges. This is Danielle's graph, which shows that the token economy was effective. These are her averages and ranges.
So there were some limitations during our replication. One of the limitations included the tools that we used to count our steps. Some of the individuals used Fitbits while others used generic step counters. There is a possibility that due to the difference in tools, the accuracy of our steps may have been affected. Also, during the original study, was conducted in a controlled environment. However, ours was in a more varying environment. There was also treadmills used. Some people walked outside. Also, another limitation that we had is that we had to use our own money to purchase the reinforcers. So using our own money, there was a possibility that the reinforcers were not as rewarding as they could have been. We also had the ability to buy our own reinforcers that we could use, that we could purchase. Hang on. Sorry, guys. I get really messed up on these things. Is there any way to rewind it?
No, just keep going.
Do you, okay. You want me to go with the limitations? I'll go with the limitations. So one of the other limitations with the project was that participants had to use their own money to buy the reinforcers, and that in and of itself can be non-reinforcing, because when you have to use your own money to buy something that's supposed to be reinforcing, you're still spending your own money. But along with that, because we were spending our own money, we had the ability to buy our own reinforcers before they were actually earned. So unlike the original study where the reinforcing items were taken away from them and they weren't allowed to use them until they were earned, we did not have that ability. And so it was easier to buy the items before they were earned, therefore devaluing some of the items. And also we needed to reward ourselves with the reinforcing items. In the original study, the participants had a bystander or a worker who gave them the item, gave them the tokens, and gave them the reinforcing item once they were received, but we had to do that ourselves. And so we found that through this study and through a bunch of the other studies that we read, the token reinforcement system can in fact be used to increase steps taken by adults throughout the day. There were some variables noted in the limitations that could have affected some of the steps that were taken, but ultimately the token system demonstrated that there was a clear functional relationship between when the token system was put in place and then when the baseline was introduced again, because it was introduced multiple times, and for a majority of the participants, the intervention, like they had more steps during the intervention phase than they did in the baseline phase, which showed the functional relationship. And then during the group discussion periods, so after each intervention phase and after each baseline phase, we had a group discussion and we did try and determine if during baseline the steps would remain consistent or even increase with the withdrawal, when we took away the token system. And while most of the participants suggested that they would in fact keep up the walking at the higher rate when the token system was in place, during baseline, it showed that the token system was reinforcing because they didn't walk as many steps during baseline. Overall, this was a fun experience. Does anyone have anything else to add?
It was fun replicating a study.
I feel like I'm Lauren. Even though my data is kind of all over the place, I feel like it was effective. It just one of the limitations could have been that we all are in different environments and working, and our work environments and our daily lives just kind of affected the data, but overall I think it was effective for most of us.
All right, and that's our presentation.
The end.